Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to how to make a game for complete beginners. So we're going to start from zero, from scratch, no experience required. We're going to use Game Maker Studio 2 to make a game. Now we're going to start with just the basic stuff, you know, how to do whatever, like create an object, create sprites, etc. And we're going to move up through movement, better movement, collisions, everything else like that. We're going to make a game together. Hope you enjoy. If I'll say it now, if you want to keep seeing the series, hit subscribe, comment down below things you, opinions you have in the video, questions you have, any questions at all, just ask down below. I'll answer them as best as I can, as quickly as I can. So again, if you like it, and heck, if you want me to try going a certain direction of like features you want to learn how to add in, just ask and I'll do what I can to show you how to do it. All right, guys, enjoy the video. Peace out. All right, so first we've opened Game Maker Studio. This looks like this. Well, looks like this. Got this little window here. So what do we do with this? Well, the first thing we're gonna do is open up our room. So this is, you don't have to, but we're going to. This is what your game looks like currently. Your game is currently a black room. That's just a grid to show you where things snap. Go into your room properties, it's 1920 by 1080. Yours might be set to like 1024 by 768. But you can change that by going to File, Preferences, and not General Settings. If you go to Options, I should say, go to Main, change your game frames per second. Let's do that now. 60. Now. Graphics? No. By the way, turn on your synchronization and preferences, room settings. You go into room settings, and that's where you can change your default room size to 1920 by 1080. That's what we're going to start with, 1920 by 1080, of course. So, okay, everything's good. Now what do we do? Well, let's look at what we have. We have a background layer, which we can change the color of and other things, and we have an instance layer. Now, there's a few types of layers. We'll get into those a bit later when we talk about tile sets and etc. But you have your instance layer, your background layer, just the background instances, which you actually put things on, like layer your objects. That's mostly your used layers. Tile layers for tile sets like art assets, paths, asset layers, layer folders, etc. First, we're actually going to change this to layer. Now, layers are one thing you can just name whatever you want, as long as you're is, because we'll call it in some function later on. But it's not real. It makes, there's, if you just keep creating layers, you're just going to have instance 1 through, and you're not going to know what you're doing. So it's good to name things. All right. And looking around your window, you can, if you have the paid version, you can export your game by clicking right there. Get a black screen. You can run your game by clicking right there. And you're just going to get your game, which is a black screen. Other than that, capture like that, and that's your entire game. So let's add something. Let's add an object. First, how you do that is you go to your resource tree over here. You can go back to your workspace if you like. Doesn't make a difference. You click Objects, and you right-click and go to Create Object. Now, objects are things you directly interact with. And by the way, I apologize for the black bar down here. I don't know how to get rid of that. I can't full screen Game Maker right now. You're going to name your object. Let's call it Object Layer. Now, here's the first thing I'll teach you. One thing about coding practices, sticking to the naming conventions you're using. So, like your casing, or how you're like typing it out. So you can go, I like to put, if it's an object, obj before something, like object player. Some people like to go object underscore player. What you name it doesn't actually matter, as long as it's not like the exact same name of another object, whatever. Some people just go O player, that's called camel case when it's like a small letter, letter's capital. After that, O player, player 1 is camel case, O underscore player, which you don't have to camel case the underscores. You're doing sprites, SPR, player, and it goes for your enemy, etc. But we're going to call this object player. All right, object player. This is you. This is your player. Now, events are what we actually do. I'm going to minimize that. I'll leave it up for now. What events are what actually happens. You can add a bunch of them. But right now, I'm not going to add any because currently, if we had an object, we can go into our room, go to the player layer. Let's bring our object into the game. That's our little guy right here. We're going to run the game. What happens? I bet you can guess. Nothing happens. Nothing at all. So what do? We gotta make it look like something. You can't see it. Like, it exists. You can change your background color to like, I don't know, change your background color to like super dark purple or something like that. And then you run the game. You'll be able to tell immediately that it actually is doing something. Your game has nothing in it. So if you go to that, it needs a sprite, but you don't have any. Now you can use this button to create a new sprite, but for now, I'm going to show you how. If you go over to sprites, you right click it, you go to create sprite, and here's the sprite window. We can name it. Let's go SPR layer, edit the image, and for now, we're just going to do a basic, go to fill, pick a color you like, and fill it. I'm going to go with green. By the way, if you want to grid things out, if you do want to do something specific, the grid tool is right there. It's really easy. And Bob's your uncle. So we go back to object and we assign it by going sprite and click the sprite we want. It's just this whole thing's a button. And now if you have this sprite and you want to get back to this screen, you click that and you get this back. If you want to edit it, you click the edit image. So there's edit sprite, which edits the info of the sprite, and the image. Now we can talk more about making sprites later, but for now I'll tell you can change the size of it this way, scaling, resizing, all that. Edit the image. You can import sprites from assets you already have, which is just directly importing. Then you rename it, all that stuff, and you can add frames, multiple frames, do things, but we don't need to talk about it right now. The only thing I will say is we're going to set this origin point to middle center, which is going to be 32, 32, as in 32, 32 for a guy. That's what we're going to set it, and I'll explain why in a bit. But other than that, let's keep going. Close the recent windows, and let's go back to our room. Now we see a guy in there. We run it, you'll see a guy in there. Cool. Now, what do? Well, let's add a wall because, no, you know what? Let's directly make him do something. Now, there's multiple ways you can do this. But first, this seems a little cluttered, right? So what we're going to do is you can go up here and hit collapse or expand dock panels. The same as clicking all of these. You just go boop, and they all go away. You hit it again, or F12, they'll come back, and you can just, I like to click these away, leave my resource tree open, then I can just toggle resource tree on and off. Let's add an event. Events are what actually happens. You got create, destroy, step, alarms, draw events, mouse events when the mouse does something, when the keyboard does something, collisions, etc. Now you might be thinking, okay, if I want to move it, right, what should I do? I should set a key event to key pressed whatever, right? Well, here's the thing. You could do that, but what I'm going to say is don't. Because hypothetically, you could go key down left, as in left arrow key. Let's change that. You can change the event or create a new one. The key down right. And that equals X, i.e. of the object of your player is equal to X plus 1. which means you take that origin point, wherever that is located. So right here, look down the corner, it says 901 by 636, 901 by 636. We move that 901 this way, add to it, which means we incrementally make it bigger. We do that, and we go, we're moving the character. Well, that's the only thing there. Fine. Now, the problem is you'd have to, A, multiply this repeatedly. You'd have to duplicate the event over and over again, and there's less you can do with it. You can't check properly, and it'll become more of a hassle than it's worth. By the way, to explain how this works, why you have the X, you reassign X to X itself plus 1. So whatever its current X is, you add 1 to it. And now there's different ways you can do that, and I'll get into those a bit later. But for now, we're going to go and delete this. What we're going to do is actually, because we want it to check, we want to do something every frame, you would add a step event. Okay? Step. And now let's add a statement. For that, we're going to give it some stats. Okay? We're going to give it its speed. We're going to create the create event, which is what happens the moment the instance is created. Like beginning of the game or when you directly create it, this happens once. It sets everything. It essentially creates the starting DNA that you can then change as you go. But this only happens once. So let's set its speed equals 1. By the way, you always want to hit a semicolon. End of like if you finish a line, or most lines, you want to hit a semicolon. If you're doing like an if statement, you don't, and I'll show you that in a second. The speed is equal to 1. Okay, cool. But here's the thing. Why is it if I did bid sidzz is equal to 1, it's blue? What's the difference? Well, if I type in and let it autocomplete, that's a built-in variable, versus says is just a variable. So built-in variables are ones that are like not hard-coded in the game, but those are like built-in by GameMaker Studio. And if you use speed specifically, it can overwrite itself. Like there's not as much finite control. So for example, if you have a guy with a gun and he shoots a bullet, and it just travels from like the front of the barrel or to it, like in a direction at speed, you can set speed equals 1. You can just go speed equal 1, direction equals where the mouse is. That's not actually how you code that, but that you can make it like that. But when you're doing finite controls, that's not the best idea. And there's more stuff like that you can add in. Like there's more built-in variables that you'll want to use a lot. What we're going to do is we're going to add 2 speeds. A horizontal speed, just h speed, is equal to, I'm going to set it to 5, okay? Set it to 5, semicolon. Vertical speed is equal to 5, semicolon. Cool. That works. Now, I sometimes set it to 4, but I'm going to set it to 5 because it's going to show us a, how should I say this? It's going to show us some code. Something that'll happen code related later. Yeah, I'm going to set you to 5. And it's good. Vertical speed, horizontal speed, vertical speed, both equal 5. And so those are 5 at the start of the game. Now what we're going to do, we're going to make an if statement. We want to ask if something has happened. If keyboard, right? We want to check if the keyboard check has happened. Key, and let's say you want to use the arrow keys to go right. You know, vertical VK, virtual key, right. And see if you want to make sure there's just enough brackets. If, you know, maybe I'll accidentally miss a bracket later so you guys can see how that works. We hit that, it ends the state. We don't want to do that. This is one of the things where we don't want to hit it semicolon, because that would say, check if this happens, then completely move on. What we want to do is say, if we're doing something, then let's go, we're going to use curly brackets. We're going to go to let us go into the statement. And then curly bracket, open, close, I'm going to go, and then tab in. Good coding practice, every time you have a new line, you want to indent, like a new step inside. So if this happens, go in. Hopefully you can see my mouse do all the stuff. Like, if this happens, go in. So if that happens, x equals x plus horizontal speed. And now let's make it go. Well, let's copy and paste it because typing that out would be a pain, right? So if keyboard check VK virtual key left, then x equals x plus h speed. But if we ran that, well, it doesn't know which way we want to go. So right goes right. And if I hit left, it goes left. Heck, you don't even know which key I'm hitting, so you can't tell. Here's the problem. You're not assigning x just plus means go in that direction. You're saying modify the x coordinate by, so x will now become itself plus whatever that value is. So if your x, for example, let's say x is equal to 12. And then you want to go right. So x, you want to by 4. And then you want to go, that would mean x would have to go right by 4 pixels. So x, i.e. 12, plus 4 equals 12 plus 4. I don't know why I keep typing a 5. Gives you your x. Well, now x equals 16. By the way, when you're checking something, like you say equals, you're changing it. You're declaring that it's changing. If you go equals equals, that's different. So if you're going if x equals 0, if the x coordinate, the origin, if the x coordinate of this object based on, like, if this point right here on the object, if this object's origin is equal to 0 on the whole screen, do something. But if it was x equals 0, if x equals 0, that doesn't work because unnecessary using as a statement. You're stating x is changing. That's checking, that's stating. So why does this not work? Well, what if you want to go x is 12, you want to go right by 4. Based on what we did last time, we want to go from 12 to 8. We're going to go 8 pixels to that. We want to go x minus 4. That'd mean our horizontal speed is 5, right? So we want to, it's a positive number, but we want to go the other way. X minus 5 goes to the left. And you can hit F5, or you can hit that little arrow key. You're going to see what happens. Left. Oh, I mean left, right, left, right, left, right. Cool beans, right? Bob's your uncle. You have essentially a game. Something is happening. Now, I could do this. I could copy, paste it, and go y, and y plus equals, x plus equals. But I'm not going to yet. I'm going to show you something easier. I'm going to do two things, one at a time. I'm going to completely change this. So instead of x equals x plus 1, for example, and change this to x is equal to x minus 1. By the way, I like spacing as my personal coding practice, and a lot of people do too. Otherwise, your code looks like that. And it's like really convoluted, and it doesn't like differentiate things. So it's like, it's all about making things clear for yourself and anyone else reading your code. If someone else can't read your code, you're not a nice person. So how do we make this easier? Because that's a pain to type out the whole thing every time. So if we go x minus equals 1, semicolon. That's where we want to end that statement. We're done doing this. We're not done doing this until we close it. You open it, do everything, and close it. Then we're going to x plus equals 1. What that means, if we run it, it still does it. It's moving slower because we only got 1, but it's basically saying x is equal to itself plus 1. It plus equals is itself by 1. You know what I mean? X minus equals x times equals would just be 0. So you go plus. A little trick, by the way, that it'll come up later, but I'll just tell you now and I'll remind you guys later, that if you're just incrementing it by 1 and you go x minus minus, or you're going left, x plus plus, what that does, and just go minus minus on this, is if you're only incrementing by 1 and you're not like plus 2 or plus equals 2, minus equals 2, 4 times whatever, and you're just if you're increasing whatever variable for h speed plus plus, if you're just incrementing it by 1, you can just go plus plus. Now there is a difference between plus plus x and the x plus plus, but we can get into that later. It's about when the instance gets iterated. So you return the variable, like if it's x, then this you'll return it, then add 1. But if you go like, if I say, for example, if plus plus x equals, if plus plus x, or do something plus plus x, means you add 1 to x, you increment it by 1, then you use it. So if x is 0, if plus plus x is equal to 1, it would be true. But if x plus plus, well, basically it's the order at which you do it. If you go plus plus x, you're taking whatever is incremented by 1. If it's x plus plus, you're doing it and then incrementing it. But you don't need to focus on that right now. So why did we not use those ones? Okay, plus, if I go back to plus equals 1, why do we not want that? Why do I not want x minus equals 1? Because that's hard coded. If you ever played a game like World of Warcraft, after 13 years, the base starting bag space is still 16, and that's because way back 13 years ago, that variable was used to code a bunch of other stuff in the game. And genuinely, it's like legacy hard coded into the game. Basically, you never want to give a straight number, in a step event. In a create event, yeah, you can do that here, because you need to create the value of the variable. But here, you don't want to do that. So I don't want to say x plus 5, because the h speed is 5 anyway, so why don't I just go x plus equals 5? Because that means every time you'd have, especially if there's you do this 15 times, you'd have to go change it every single time. And on top of that, if you change 1, something goes wrong, or you miss 1, something goes wrong. That's why you create a variable called h speed, and you set that, and that v speed. Whoops. And then for vertical, you go v speed, because you have 2 separate things, just in case you want them to move speed separately. And there's also another reason why we set them separate to each other. But that will come with collisions. So, now they move. But, here's the thing. When we type in this, it basically says if keyboard check this. So if, now go check if the keyboard's happened, and you're good to go. If it's true, if you check the keyboard for the right arrow key, and it's held down, ergo, it returns true, then do it. But if you did this over and over again, also, I don't like coding like that, but if you go like this, and you're checking every single time, A, you're going to slow down your game. Like, that's really bad for just optimization. But B, it's just a pain in the ass to type. So, because what a step is it does everything in the step in order every single frame, every single step of the game, every single frame. What if we go and we set a variable called key? Remember, start with camel case, you start small. Key right. Key right is equal to keyboard check DK right. And then we change this to key right. That's cool, right? Oh, don't do that. Bob's your uncle. And then you add a semicolon here. It says we check this, we're good to go. And that means every single time you call it, if key right, you use key right down the page, it already knows it. It already has the truth of it for the frame. You don't have to like keep doing it. So it's really, really handy every single time. But it also means you can change it once and not have to do it again, and you can change it. So what if I wanted keyboard right yet a bunch of times? Instead of changing it every single time to like the D key, you can just change it one time. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. I'm betting you guys don't want to use the arrow keys like we did back in the 90s. Let's change it to, would VK work? It doesn't. So how do we add in keyboards? Well, what if you type in ORD, and if it autocompletes like that, you can click it or hit enter. But ORD, double quotes or D end quotes. By the way, if you just type in A or like lowercase, it doesn't really like that, so don't. Let's use capital letters. Keyboard, key right, key check, or D. And what I'm going to do is, because we're starting early, key up, key left, key down, key right. Also, by the way, if you go and hit tab, 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 tab increments everything by 4 spaces, but it doesn't directly move it. Like, tabs like as if there's a grid every four spaces. It'll move it to the start of the next grid line. It's like snapping to a grid instead of going space 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 knowledge, space 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 knowledge. Instead of doing that and being the worst person ever because you just hit the space bar all the time when you're coding in a room with other people, and then they hate you and never want to speak to you again. Seriously, don't do it. Then what you do, WAS, you don't suck as much as I do, and you do that. Key right, and that means I can now get rid of key left. Now let's add our vertical speed. Key up. Key down. Boom. Key up, key down. Well, obviously, these changing the X coordinates isn't going to work, right? Well, first, let's see if our changes actually do anything. So, left, and right, good to go. Bob's your uncle, right? Cool beans. So, what's next? Well, we got to change key up to Y plus, key down to be Y minus, wouldn't it? Let's test it out. We go up, we'd probably add, right? Because we've all seen those graphs. You know, Y gets higher as you go up, X gets higher as you go to the right. So down should be negative. But here's the problem. Now I'm going to hit the W key right now. I hit the W key and I go down. What just happened? Y plus equals H speed. I added to my y value and I went down. Well, here's the problem. You look at the room and look at the value right down here. This point is 0. And if I move around up here, y gets positive, y gets negative, actually. Like, it's indexed differently. So I'm going to pull up Microsoft Paint so I can maybe give you guys a better example. Oh, what's happened to you, Paint? My face, I'm sorry about that. I know no one wants to look at my face. So I'm going to that. And let's explain some maths. I know is the first thing you wanted to have happen today. It's you were just waiting all day with bated breath, and finally someone talked to you about math. I know. I'm such a generous man. So let's look at this. Let's do a rudimentary little chart. And if you remember your, let's do a brush. If you remember your maths from back in like high school or even grade school, you have x-axis, y-axis. I'm going to increase the size. So x and y, and x is 0 and 0. To index that better. This point here is 0, 0, x, comma, y. And now let's say y 5, x 5. So this point would be 5, 5. This point would be 5, 7, because we're going up by 2. I know this is not a proper size iteration. And over here would be 5, or over here would be 7, 5, because we're increasing the x value by 7. So the x is still proper. Back here would be -5, -7. I know I'm not scaling it exactly, but here's the thing. We go into a game and we still have 0, 0, but if you look at, like, let's say this is your monitor and this is 0, 0. And when you're doing like directions, this would be 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 170 degrees. And this is also 360, but you'll very rarely end 60. Unless it was like, did a full rotation kind of thing. So that's still, you know, angles and all that, and, you know, right angles, triangles, and blah, 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 blah. Oh, look, I made a triangle. That's still a thing, but game windows are indexed a bit differently. So if this is 0, 0, and we're making a game that's 1920 by 1080, and this point, just make it easier. This point is equal to 1920 by 1080, and the x and the y value. So that would mean going down. Whoop. This is 0, 180. That was really bad. I'm sorry about that. That was also terrible. This is 180. And this point is 1920 by 0. So, you know, you divide the middle like boop, 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 boop. And, well, you get, if you shrink the resolution, it goes 1280 by 720. And you know how it works. But why actually to go up? Let's say your character was standing, let's make you purple. Let's say you're standing here, right? And you want to go up. You want your character to jump. You'd think you would add to Y, because that's what you've done your entire life on charts and stuff like that. But because we're using this quadrant and we're calling this positive y. To go up, that's not what you would do. You would go, to go up by 5, you would go y minus equals 5. So you have to go plus means you're going towards the bottom. It'll take a little bit of time to reprocess that, maybe, but that's what's happening. So key up is minus plus. We run it again. And look at that. Bob's your uncle. We're moving around. Now, guys, that has been it for this video. Yeah, that's been it for this video. Again, if you like it, let me know in the comments down below. Tell me what specific features you want to see next. Next video, I'm going to do collisions and fix the movement system, because you might not realize this, but we didn't make a good movement system. You'll see why on the next video. But we'll do collisions, fix the movement system, and go from there. I'll add a wall and an enemy, and we'll use those to collide with for different types of collisions. But other than that, hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.